I'm Sam, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some tips on how to reach multiple saving goals at the same time. This is a question I had in my Smart 20s community Facebook group. I want this video to be super practical, so I've included an example as well. There's very little math involved, so please don't worry, and I'll be going through it with you as well. This is literally, if I have multiple saving goals to achieve, this is exactly how I figure out how much to save each week. And at the end, I also share some saving tips if you struggle to save money. So make sure you stick around for those at the end as well. So the first thing you need to do in order to reach multiple saving goals is to actually know what those goals are and to have them be extremely specific. Goals that are really vague aren't motivating at all. So if you're saving for a house deposit, what kind of house do you want? Where do you want to live? What do you want the interior to look like? Go on Pinterest and figure that out. If you want to go on vacation, if you want clothes, if you want makeup, I don't know what you're trying to save for. Whatever it is, make sure you know and that it's really specific. Once you know what goals you want to reach, it's really important to know the total that you'll need to reach each goal. I'm going to give an example just so that we have some tangible numbers to work with and that you can actually work through this process yourself. If we just keep it too vague, this won't be as helpful as I know it can be, but it's really important that you have a dollar figure or whatever currency you're in. That might require some research, but it's really important to have that number. For the example I'm going to do, we're going to have a holiday or a vacation, as some people call it, a house deposit, and a new camera. You can do this with as many saving goals as you want, or it could just be 2, or for anything that you want to save for at all. These are just an example so that we have something to work with. The totals for each, just for the sake of an example and to use figures that I feel would be about right if you're in Australia, we're going to say that we need $20,000 for a house deposit, $3,000 for a vacation, and $1,000 for a new camera. So the next step is to figure out how much you can save from your current income. Of course, you could always increase your income, and there are a million ways that you could do that, like asking for a raise, changing jobs, doing something entrepreneurial, and that would be a totally different video. So in this one, I'm just going to be chatting about how to save your current income. To do that, you would have a look at your current income, your non-negotiable expenses such as rent and food, and then your discretionary expenses. You'd list them all out so you get a really clear idea of how much money you potentially have to spend. For this example, I'm going to be saying that we have $400 per week to save. That might be close to your situation, that might not. It doesn't really matter. It's just for the sake of me being able to work through a proper example with you. And if you really struggle to save, I'm going to give you some actual tips, the ones that have worked the best for me at the end of this video. So make sure you stick around for those if you have trouble saving money. But for now, just figure out, like, in an ideal world, not too ideal, like you don't want it to be unrealistic, but you do want it to be like, if you were being your best self, what do you think you could save? So at this point, we have our 3 savings goals. We have a house deposit, a vacation, and a new camera, and we know how much we need. The next step is to figure out a deadline for each of those. And the example we're going to use is 2 years for a house deposit, 6 months for the vacation, and 3 months for the new camera. Also, if you're thinking more in terms of like, I want to go on a vacation in summer 2018, then there's a website I love using. I don't know the name of it for the life of me, so I will put it below, but you can just type in today's date and that date, and it will calculate the number of months and weeks and days and minutes and seconds until that day. So you don't need to like get out your get out your calendar and count through. You can just type it into this website. So now that we know how long we have to achieve that goal, it's time to figure out if we could actually achieve all of those goals. For my example, I'm going to work in weeks because I don't know, I just always feel like weeks are the easiest for me to work in whenever I'm calculating budget kind of stuff. But if you're getting paid monthly or every 2 weeks and that makes more sense to you, we're figuring out how much you're going to need to save essentially from each pay or per week or whatever you end up choosing. And then what we're going to be doing is dividing the total amount we need to save by the number of weeks. This is not complicated maths. I know some people are like, I wasn't expecting to do maths, but this is really simple maths. It's literally the total you want to save divided by the number of weeks. I'm even going to do it with you so that you have a proper example that you can follow. So for the house deposit, I said I want to save $20,000 in 2 years' time. So that is 104 weeks. I looked that up before. I didn't actually know that. I could have figured that out. The vacation, I said I want to do that in 6 months' time. So that means I have 26 weeks. And the new camera I want in 3 months. So that's only 12 weeks away. And then all I do at this point is divide the total I need to save by the number of weeks. So I divide $20,000 by 104 weeks to get a weekly total of $193 and something cents. That's how much I need to save every week towards a house deposit if I'm going to reach that goal by that date. To figure out how much I need to save per week towards my vacation, I divide 3,000, which is the amount that we said I want to save for a vacation, divided by 26 weeks, which is $115 and something cents. I did these calculations before. I don't know them off the top of my head. And the final one is that I want my $1,000 camera in 12 weeks time. So to figure out how much I need to save per week towards my $1,000 camera, I divide 1,000 by 12 and the total is $83 per week. So at this point in time, we've got all the different totals that we'd need to save per week in order to reach each of our goals. And we also had before the total amount we have available to save. So now what we need to do is add up all the little bits that we need to save each week to reach each of those goals and then compare it to the amount we have available to save and see if that'll fit in it. So actually when I was making up this example before I filmed this video, the figures that I made up worked perfectly with the amount of money that I had to save. So everything together came to $390.68 and I said that I'd have $400 available to save. So that's the ideal situation where you end up really close. If you end up that the amount you need to save per week to reach each of those goals is way more than you've got to save, then this is where you need to tweak either the deadlines or the amount of money that you want to save. So you're going to have a play around with it and see whether there's some adjustments you can make. Maybe you'll go on a cheaper vacation or you'll go a little bit later. Maybe you'll get your house a little bit later, but this is where you play around with it. It's really important as well to know which of these are your priorities. So if your house deposit is your biggest priority, then don't move that and have a fiddle with the other two. But if a new camera is your biggest priority, fiddle with the other two. It's just a matter of doing this a few times, but you're trying to get as close as possible to the real amount that you have to save because you don't want to create such a crazy saving goal that it seems so overwhelming and so intimidating that you don't actually end up saving any money at all because it doesn't feel like it'll make a difference. Now that I have the figures that I would need to save towards each goal, what I would personally recommend doing is setting up a bank account for each of those different goals. So if you're in Australia like me, there are heaps of different bank accounts you can open with no fees, and I have a million bank accounts, and I actually got a call from my bank a few weeks ago, like near the end of financial year, and they said, we're cleaning up our accounts and we just wanted to see if we can close any of these accounts you have. And I was like, no, leave them all open. Like, I'm not using them all at once, but I love having little like buckets for each different goal. I love having a different set of money that I can look and say like, oh, that's my money for my house and that's my money for my blog and all of that kind of thing. I love having it separate. I find that when I lump it all together, it's so much easier to just dip into things because it's vague. There's no real attachment to anything, and then I just end up slowly taking that money. Whereas if it's for my house deposit, if I'm trying to take money away from it, I'm like, well, do I really want to take money away from my house deposit? No. So I think it's really important just to bring those goals to mind every time you're saving money, to have separate accounts if you possibly can. And once you have these amounts and you have the bank account set up, my biggest recommendation, and this is what worked so well for me when I was saving a lot of money to study abroad in Montreal a few years ago, was that I paid myself first. So I didn't save the leftovers, and I know that's so tempting to do, and that's often the trap that we get stuck in, but I paid myself first, so I had an automatic transfer set up. And actually I didn't the whole time. Sometimes I just did it myself as soon as I got paid, but when my paycheck came in, I would immediately transfer the money to my savings account. I did actually have the savings with another bank, so that when I logged into my normal day-to-day banking, I couldn't even see it, so I wouldn't try to dip into it, and you had to wait like 2 days to transfer the money back, so I couldn't impulse spend it on anything, which was also just another little added thing that I did to make sure I really saved that money. My tips for saving money if you have struggled, the first is the one I just said, to pay yourself first. And I think that it can really be helpful to have it not be a really dramatic amount at first. Like when I started doing it, I was saving like $50 a week, and then I'd increase it like a few weeks later to $100, and then a few weeks later to $200, because I was slowly decreasing my day-to-day discretionary spending. And I'm never ever going to tell you to stop buying coffee or to stop doing those little things that you love. Like when people say like, oh, you know, to save money, just bring lunch to work and stop buying coffee. When most people do that, they don't actually have a plan for that money, so they just end up spending it on other shit. But normally there's a lot of things we can cut before it comes to that aren't actually having that much of an impact on our life. But the little things, like if you love coffee, or you know, you love having brunch with your friends on a Saturday morning, like don't cut the things you love. Look for the things that you're like, yeah, like, you know, that's nice to have if I'm earning a bit more, but if I really want to go on a vacation and have a bit more financial independence in my own house, then I'm willing to give up like a Netflix account that I watch once a month. Like I was paying for Netflix and I realized I was hardly watching it, just because we have shitty internet connection in the room that we watch it in. Anyway, so just having a look at things like that where you couldn't really care if you're spending money that much. Don't cut the things that you love. I know everyone says bring lunch to work and don't buy coffee, but there are better ways to save money than that. I also highly recommend following some Instagram accounts and making Pinterest boards that will inspire you to stay motivated with your goals. So Pinterest, definitely the best, but if you're on Instagram all the time or you're on Facebook, it's nice to also have those constant reminders of your goals. And I think it's also great to have a weekly or monthly or whatever increment you want to work in goal, so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming, particularly with the house deposit and wanting to save an amount like $20,000. It can seem like so much that a small amount won't make a difference. And that's where you get in the trap of thinking, oh, you know, I'll just buy this one new foundation and it won't make any kind of difference because it's, you know, $50 out of $20,000. It's not that big a deal, but then you fall into that trap time and time again, and that's how it all adds up. I really love to think of it in terms of a weekly goal. So if I am spending $50 on a foundation and my weekly goal is only $190, it's like, oh, well, I probably don't want to be spending that money on that foundation so I can achieve my goal, instead of like this big $20,000. It's kind of like at the gym. If your goal is six-pack abs and that's really far away for you, you're not really going to care if you have that delicious halloumi burger, because it feels so far away that it won't make a difference. But if you make it a lot more tangible and a lot closer to the present, then it really is going to just have a different impact on the way you think about your goals and the way that you spend money. And the last thing I'd say, that it's really important not to slip into an all or nothing mentality with this. A lot of readers of my blogs are perfectionists, which, if you haven't heard me talking about perfectionism before, basically means that you have a fear of rejection, a fear of disapproval, and that fear is really strong and it guides a lot of your behavior. And one of the ways that perfectionists deal with that is having an all or nothing mindset. So we tell ourselves it's only worth saving for a house deposit, if I can save that $190 every single week, if something happens and I can only save 100 or I can only save 50, there's no point and I'll just look like an idiot for doing it half-assed. And it's so important not to get into that thinking, especially when it comes to this stuff, because every bit does make a difference. And if you do put even just 50 away, that adds up and it creates momentum. And the more your money grows, the more you're going to want to keep growing it, and the more that you're going to create that really amazing financial habit. And that's going to help you save so much more money and just be smarter with your money in the future. As much as you can, don't get into the all or nothing thinking. And I like to do that by keeping the goals weekly or as small as possible, and to just remind myself that every bit does matter and it's better to put something in instead of nothing. So I hope those tips have helped you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't yet, please make sure you subscribe. Just hit the button below. I share lots of videos and we'll be doing 4 videos every single week. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. And I would love to have you as part of my Smart 20s community on Facebook. The link will be in the description. But if you want to chat to me and like-minded women as well about personal growth and lifestyle and all of the kinds of things that I talk about on my channel, make sure you go and join us there as well. My hair today is just shitting me. I got a haircut yesterday and I do love it, but it's at that point where I don't quite know what to do with it. And it's so windy that it's just been super staticky. And so I had to before, and it just shitting me.